Dr. Wakild, you're back. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing so well. I'm doing so well because I so enjoyed our first conversation about the parachuting beavers. And I was just telling my son about it this morning. He's like, what are you doing today? I'm like, oh my gosh, Dr. Wakild's coming back. It's going to be fantastic. It's really cool stuff. And like those nuggets of history. And again, obviously your explanation of the surface water storage that we experienced through, the 1800s and then lacked the flooding of the Boise River, all these different things. It's like, wow, man, I didn't know any of that. And you're back. You're back to talk more Idaho history. God bless it. What are we hitting today? I'm in for all of it.
So I think it would be fun for us to talk a little bit about place names. And just the idea of place is something that I've studied and thought a lot about for a really long time. It's kind of one of those classic tropes of geography, like what is a place and how does it combine the human and the natural elements and the physical elements, and how do we give it meaning? And I think it's a really interesting thing to reflect on in terms of Idaho. Number one, because Idaho's special, right? It's a special place, and it's a really interesting place for how it combines different bioregions and different ecosystems. And northern Idaho is really different from southwestern or southeastern Idaho. And so there isn't sort of one thing that holds it together. And part of what does is actually the names that we use. And they have their own etymology, right, which is the science of names and how you understand what names mean, and how they've been layered on top of each other. I think it's just one of those interesting threads to think about, especially because Idaho is changing so quickly, right? And has this really dynamic influx right now of people that are new and people that are really curious about how we say the things that we say and why we do it that way, and some of those pieces.
Was it you that told me that Idaho is a made-up name?
Yes.
Yes. It was you, or it was like you or Monica Church. It was one of them. Yeah. It's like a totally made-up name. To that end, I took philosophy of legal theory when I was a junior. Rhetoric of legal philosophy. There it is. Yeah, because I was a rhetoric major. Yeah, and I knew philosophy. Yeah, and this the professor that I had was, one day I remember her distinctly saying that she was like, "Look, what is a thing?" Right? She's like, because I'll go on a walk, and she would go on a walk with another professor, and she was kind of Berkeley type and really enjoyed the outdoors, and she's like, "Oh, that's foxglove or something," and then her friend would say, "No, it's blank, 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 the Latin name." It's like, she's like, so what is it? Which is it? Right. And which name you select says a lot about you and what, is it Mount McKinley or Mount Denali? Right. These are two distinct different things. And the naming of it betrays a presumed history that you're like, oh, we're here. Yeah. But it's called Boise because we weren't always here, or it's called, Tacoma because you weren't always there. These are, and I know Tacoma's in Washington, but the point is, the names have this history that's kind of, it's just glossed over because we don't understand why or how or recognize the significance of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way those naming conventions sort of indicate a particular philosophy of the world, right? Is it a Coke or is it a soda or is it a pop, right?
I love it.
That's a classic one where
and
it's you can
Coke,
tell where someone's from by what they call it. And what kind of Coke do you want, right? I married a Southerner.
What kind of Coke do you want? A Sprite.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Because it's Coke could actually be every fizzy carbonated drink. Yeah. Man, that's so funny. Yeah.
Right.
Pop.
And so for the US, that there's just really clear regional indicators based on how you say that. And I do think in Idaho, if you say Boise, you haven't been here very long, right? and once you get on to the Boise, oh, that's how locals say it, that you're sort of becoming part of that linguistic tradition and also, participating in that.
Or if you put the article before a highway or freeway, the 55.
I'm
going up the 55.
Yes.
I got nailed so hard with that. I was so bad. And this gal was really polite about it. She was like, hey, I watched your episode with blah. It was episode number 10. She's like, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But just so you know, it's not the 55.
No.
It's 55 or Highway 55. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Bless you, woman.
Yes, exactly. And tiny little things like the preposition, right? Or the article or the adjective that you use can really sort of belie a regional specificity or a kind of philosophy of the world. And there's an interesting way of thinking about place names.
Could I tell you one really fast?
Oh, yeah, please.
I was with a park ranger, a director of, I think he's the director of Thousand Springs last week. And it was Dave, great guy, like loved every second of it. Hanging out with him, he was taking me around to all these different spots, like gave me all of this history. I was like, wow. And he's taking me through Hagerman, which was this like gorgeous little town. And he's like, we actually have some good restaurants here. And we drove past him like, that looks like, we don't have time to stop. But I was like, I would definitely stop. Like you could tell the pride that and like care that this place had. And he was like, we have some good Italian too. And he's like, it wasn't Italian, it was Italian. I was like, bless you. But again, he probably said pop. Like, I don't know, but it was, he's like the third or fourth person I've heard say Italian. And I'm like, oh, it's not Italian. It's Italian.
Italian.
Here anyway. Yeah. Super cool. I think it was the president of the CEO of the Farm Bureau that said Italian as well. And I was like, God bless you, Zach.
That's right.
Yeah. I could be wrong. Maybe I just outed Zach. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry you were saying place names.
So there are the things that places get named after is also really interesting. And so when we think about like European settlement across the U.S. West and, Lewis and Clark, the naming tradition was to name places after people. Right. And so Lewiston or Clarkston became Washington. Right. And these were all like representations of people and of
historically important people from a specific culture.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Thank you for that. In a specific moment in time.
Right. A time frame. Right. Yes. So yeah.
Yeah. And that mattered. But those places, of course, had names before. But interestingly, they were almost never named after people. They were named after like what that place provided. So they were named after like the hunting grounds or the place where camas grows or, where the water comes out, those sorts of things. And so those different traditions belie a different worldview, but they're also flexible enough to reflect the kind of wisdom of those places. And so like naming a place after Lewis and Clark is a form of thanking them for what they provided, right? Which was wisdom and information and cause for settlement and their journals. And that is a way of sort of paying homage to important political people. But the same was also true of places, right? And so naming a place after the things that were there was an expression of gratitude and kind of a thank you for those places. And the way that wisdom and that gratitude sat in a particular place imbues it with meaning. And there is an interesting sort of cultural and intellectual conversation right now about renaming, right? And it's kind of happening willy-nilly in lots of different places. But some of the really interesting movements that I've noticed are like the one to name birds after bird things instead of after people, right? So renaming
like the
birds.
red beak?
No, like Audubon's warbler. Or like the Cooper's hawk, like who is Cooper, right? And there's a Cooper's hawk in my neighborhood. So like, shouldn't the Cooper's hawk instead be named the spots on its belly and the striped tail, or the
like
eats
a red
all
tail?
The sparrows, or
so the characteristics of it, either physical characteristics or behavioral things, instead of. And you're saying this is a movement to do this, or they're literally changing the red-tailed hawk to like the Matt hawk?
The people names exist and have for
Gotcha.
Maybe 200 years, but the American Ornithological Society has recently voted to try and move to name birds after birds.
Gotcha.
And birds after bird behavior and bird things and less after people. And so it's not like Matt's canceled, but Emily's bird gets to stay.
Yeah, right.
It's how about we just call birds after bird things and the way that we see them and the incredible characteristics that these beings have of themselves rather than who they remind us of.
Who they reminded the original person of. Right?
Exactly.
I found that bird. I'm naming it the Emily Sparrow. Right? And it's like, why? Well, because I did a lot of podcasts with, Emily. Right? Yeah. It's like, okay, but that has, so like 50 years later, it's like, wait, who was Emily?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
And why did she get the sparrow?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And specific municipalities and, sort of states, counties, cities have restrictions on naming places after living people. And so a really interesting example from World War II around Portland was Henry Kaiser, was a famous shipbuilder, right? Built
Kaiser Hospitals.
Kaiser Hospital, all of the shipbuilding all up and down the West Coast was largely built by Kaiser. And he built on the Columbia River outside of Portland this town to support shipbuilding labor and house people, and then also build all the ships for the Navy. And he wanted to name his town, because it was his company, Kaiserville, and he couldn't. And so he named it Vanport, Vancouver and Portland, and together it was Vanport, because he couldn't name it after himself. And so that was an example of a name being combined from other names, one of which was a person, but was not a living person. And so this sort of use of history in the past as a way of indicating what's happening there now is I think, really strange and funny and interesting to kind of reflect on how that comes to be. So another
Disney and Hershey missed the memo on that one.
They did not get restricted. They might be part of the reason why other places put in those restrictions, right? But then there's also like the combinations of names. So like Chinden Boulevard through the middle of Boise, Garden City on the way out to Meridian was a combination of China and garden, because the Chinese gardens along the river that fed the mines that were up in Idaho City, which before it was Idaho City, it was called Bannock, recognizing the people that live there. And the China Gardens was a description of what was actually sort of happening there. And then when the boulevard came in, the transition, it became kind of something new. And that's the other part about place names that I think is fascinating, is how they change over time. Like, our moment is not the only one where people have renamed things.
Right.
Or said them differently in a way that changes them.
Right. And if you tried to name something China Garden now,
not going to happen.
And again, you don't know. Like I knew about Garden City being a hotbed for immigrations. And again, because you had people that were growing things very aggressively, like for food and whatnot. But I didn't know, and I did know about some of the Chinese, the population of Chinese immigrants there, but I had no idea that Chinden was literally Chinese garden or China garden.
Yeah.
Chinese or China?
Not sure.
Not sure.
Probably both at one point or another. Yeah. And there's other, so like the Owyhees is another interesting name, because Owyhee is a form of the word Hawaiian, and it was used to describe a couple of fur traders that were from Hawaii that accompanied some of the fur trappers moving from Vancouver down to Utah, and that came through and that got lost. And so it would be said that's where the Hawaiians got lost. That's the Owyhees. And that became the Owyhee Mountains, which itself is sort of a spelling challenge.
Yeah, right. Kind of,
and it's like, what is that word? Where does that come from?
I've been wondering about that. And I always thought it had like native implications, where it was like, oh, it's probably, like a long lost tribe or something. Yep. But it was just a bunch of dudes that got lost.
They got lost, that were from Hawaii and that were part of the sort of party that was, or were thought to be from Hawaii. Kind of hard to say whether.
Yeah, right. What was it before the Owyhees? Like, did the native tribes there have a name for it?
I think it's always safe to assume that there was a name before it. Not all, I don't know what it was, but and many of them become lost and also were dynamic and never sort of fixed in time. But yeah, I think that there were always ways of referring to it. And again, because it wasn't like a particular, usually they were named for the part of the relationship that existed. So like the place that has snow every winter would be kind of a name, or the place where
Thousand Springs.
Is that exactly?
Yeah. Have you ever been there, by the way? Thousand Springs?
I have not been to Thousand. Well, maybe in the 90s.
It was really cool. I liked, and there's Ritter Island is there, and the Ritter Island is actually this guy named after this guy Judge Ritter, but he bought it from this family I think Mitzi was her name, and she was like obsessed with growing the best or breeding the best dairy cow, but she wasn't a dairy person. She was like, she wasn't interested in having like a large dairy. She just wanted to have the best like Holstein cow or something. And she had this incredible shop where she had automatic watering systems. She had cemented the floor, which was very uncommon at the time because they had such an abundance of water coming out of the springs. She's like, we can just hose this whole place down and it'll drain out. Right. And yeah, and so on Ritter Island, they preserved this barn area, and there are 3 houses there that you can actually rent year round, and you're right on the snake and where the water comes out. And essentially, because it's an island and it's getting fed by this water coming out of the mountains, you can like lazy river around the island. So you like go through this little river system, and then you hit the snake, and then you come back into the inlet, and you just go around Ritter Island. So cool. And it's like, yeah. And it's funny because, again, talking about naming, Ritter is not the dude who made it like famous. He's just the dude who bought it after the family was done with it. Like, it's like, Ritter wasn't the cow guy.
That's right. That's right. I do this exercise in one of my classes where I have students on the first day introduce themselves and say, like, teach us how to pronounce their name and what major they're in. And then they don't say where they're from. They have to describe where they're from without place names. And so I was really attentive to the sort of tension that was developing when people would be like, hi, my name's Bob. I'm majoring in history. I'm from California. And then, other people like, I'm from Meridian. And so what we tried to do was like disarm that and be like, can you describe where you're from?
I'm from the world of Upside Down.
Yeah.
Where everything's the opposite. Hi.
But it was like, I'm from this place where there's a river, and then maybe there's some mountains, and then, or there's, lots of highways. And it was amazing how much that would bring students together.
Yeah.
Not having that initial, this is who I am as a label right when they started, but instead like, what's a description of what you've noticed about that particular place? And I think place is one of the forms of identity that can bring us together if we let it. And if we are better at articulating the kinds of values we like in a place and why that is, and then kind of attending to them. And so I don't view it like some other pieces of identity that they become sort of these lightning rods. I think place actually has this really great leveling and sort of extension, especially if it's talked about in a particular way. And if we honor it, right? And so I also ask students to say, like, where's home? Because nobody gets to choose where they're born, but we do get to choose where we make a home, or at some points in our lives, we can make that choice. And by making that choice strategically and consciously and like sort of based on things that are impactful and meaningful in our own worldview and alignment of values, and being able to make a living also helps. So, there's an economic dimension to that. It's not all sort of in the headspace, but I think that there is a place for people to come together around that celebration of place and around that kind of recognition of the sorts of things. And for me, Idaho's like that, right? I've been adjacent to Idaho most of my life. I was born in Salt Lake.
Idaho adjacent.
Right? So I've been close. And then I went to high school in Ontario, just across the Oregon border. So this sort of, and then moved back to Boise to work at Boise State in 2012. And so I'm here by choice and can sort of claim to be from here, but also not really. And so I'm really attentive to some of those gates that people keep and think that there's so much to be gained from kind of articulating like why I came back and why I choose to stay and what it is that makes a community, but also that intermingling of physical and natural and human place components really kind of a home.
Yeah, to that end, I think it's really, speaking of gatekeeping, I in 2022 when I was here for my first year, and then witnessed the political mechanism kind of operating, it was very curious to me to see how people clung on to that word conservative, and they're like, they all wanted to be the gatekeeper, and essentially the the person who had control over defining who was conservative or not. And what I found very interesting is nobody would actually define what conservative was. They just wanted to have control of that word to be like, no, I'm the real conservative. And that person's not. It's like, okay, what are you? It's like, I'm conservative. It's like, what does that mean? It means that you call me conservative. It's like, you just had this circular, like, you never actually got down to like, wait, what is that thing? And again, that name meant so much. You know, a lot of people that move here, they're like, I need a more conservative place. What does that mean? Articulate the value set that you want. Is it personal liberty? Is it fiscal responsibility? Is it, you know, death to the HOA? Like, what is it you want? Which is so funny because like you have all these developments going up and they all have HOAs. And it's like the HOAs, it's like the crisis of HOAs in Idaho is so profound and just amazing. Kind of cracks me up, man. It's like the opposite of what people want when they move here. They're like, I want freedom. So I'm going into an HOA.
And then I'm rebuilding what I just left. Yes.
Yeah. And then they want HOAs for their neighbors, but then they don't want to abide by them. God bless it, man. People are so funny. I love every second of it. It is like, I love it over there. I don't love it like, you know, at my dinner table, but just like if I can just watch everything happen, it's like, this is so interesting. I wonder how it's all going to work out. But yeah, again, like using words and being gatekeepers, especially with somebody who's, like people really like to say like, oh, you're just a transplant. It's like, okay, that's fine. But at what point do I become like an Idahoan besides like on my tax returns?
Yes, that is one of my favorite questions of all time. How long does it take to be from a place? And what does it take, right? So like some of the work that I've done in Latin America, I've thought about this really deeply because there's this field station in this national park in Peru where a North American biologist has spent now 55 years. So he's gone for half a year every year for 55 years. And I mean, talk about naming, right? Like found new species, done all sorts of really important academic and intellectual work, but is American. Right. And is sort of traveling and has the privilege and the resources to sort of be in different places. And I've always thought it's such an interesting question, like, well, does he ever become Peruvian? Could he ever become Peruvian? And like, what does it count? Because, you know, somebody who was born in Peru, but say lives in New York and runs a successful restaurant there and hasn't been back to Peru in 50 years, they're still Peruvian. And so I think that there's these really interesting dynamics about belonging, but also I think the bigger question is kind of what does it take? And we can choose to be from a different place, right? Like we can't choose to necessarily be a different race or, you know, sort of have a different place where we were born, but we can be empowered to participate in a community in a different location. And that's such a feature of the modern world. And it happens so regularly, we almost don't notice it. And I think what also happens is that people, even if they don't move, the place they're in changes because other people are. And so you can choose never to leave. And, you know, there's some statistic about the number of Americans that live 30 miles from where they were born. And it's like outrageously large. But, you know, it's like 60% or something. And yet that other 40% is always moving around them. And so it feels like they're being changed, right? And it feels like their place is changing because of that other dynamic. And I think that it's important for us to name that and to see it and to describe it and to talk about, like you said, like what's good about that and what do we mean by a place called Idaho? Because it is a made up name. Congress tried to name Colorado Idaho, right?
Like we got this flashcard. Where do we drop it?
Yeah,
like, no, okay, we'll go north. There it is.
There we go. We'll try again. Yeah, and then that is endowed with meaning after it's given that positioning, and it can be so again, right? It can be redefined.
Yeah, your recognition of places changing. I've been thinking about this. What I consider to be a really wild concept of the homeless that have homes. And I've been mulling over this for like a year because I had this sinking feeling like a year ago. I'm like, what if I never think of this as home? Like, what if like in my dreams, it's like, this is never home, right? Like you talk to people that are bilingual or, you know, learn a second language fluently and speak without an accent, but they still dream in their original language, right? And it's like, what if I never, like in my soul, like what if I never feel that? And I worried about like a year ago, I was like, oh no, like, is this like, what does this mean if this never happens, right? And the problem was, it was like, okay, but the place I used to call my home was also no longer home.
Yes.
I didn't feel at home there anymore because everything changed around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized there's a collection or a population of people in America right now that have lost their homes and they may never feel at home again, especially because wherever they're going, like Tennessee or Idaho or, Texas, there are always people that are going to be there to receive them to be like, this is not your home. Don't say this is your home. And it's like, no, this is my home. Like, that's my house. And they're like, it may be your house, but you're not at home. This is not your home. This is my home, right? You came into my home. And there's this ownership, dynamic that falls in place that's, really disheartening to somebody going through that experience, which is like, I'm trying to make this my home. And this person is the gatekeeper of like, who gets to call this their home, right? Now, obviously, you do not have to participate in that gatekeeping. It's none of that person's affair. You get to feel however you feel. But there is, I think, an anxiety with certain populations of people about belonging and this new idea of like, I have a house, but I'm totally homeless. And what that means to the American psyche and the American population, especially with the decoupling of economic prosperity from geographic locations. Because, you used to just like, I'm going to stay here. This is my home. This is where I made my way in the world. That's how I felt as a younger person. And now it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like people make money a gajillion different ways online and they just go wherever. So their home, like home is no longer where you like made money and, had your family. It's like, no. It's all in a backpack. So now you're just wandering, America. Plus we have, weaker nuclear families and like all these different things. It's like, what is home now?
Yeah.
And am I ever going to like wake up and be like, I'm at home in the same way I felt it, when I was 10?
Right. And there's sort of a diasporic quality to that, right? And so there's
That's
like
a $10 word.
Yes. SAT word. Come on. Give me some points.
Multiple spores, spores, diasporic.
So there is a diaspora, like a spreading out.
Oh, I got it.
Happened.
There we go. I was like multiple spores
Diaspora.
spread out. I'm very close. I was very close on that one.
Very close. So like thinking about the Jewish diaspora or the Mexican. Yes.
I'm with you now.
Usually sort of a cultural indication though, although I have written about the llama diaspora, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Like the Dalai Lama?
No, like the animal, like alpacas, llamas. And
like spitting on you.
Like, yes. Like bringing them with you on all your travels. And now I lost.
Is that a thing? Do people bring like the llama with them?
Well, llamas are on every continent now, right? And they are
hilarious.
Yes. So that is one way of kind of thinking about how the services they provide and the type of animal they are has kind of spread around.
So I just moved, and the guy who I bought my house from was like, "Dude, you can have anything here. I used to have 3 llamas," and he was like, "It was he was like, literally, it sounded like Silence of the Lambs, like." Blah! Like they scream all the time. And he's like, they spit and they run around. I really wanted to get like an ostrich, like a couple ostriches. Can I show you a real fast video? It is the funniest video you've ever seen in your life. And it's like, I don't think ostriches would be a good idea because they actually get like kind of violent. Like ostriches,
super strong.
They're super strong. Yeah. But like, I really want one of my kids to ride an ostrich. Because like I've always seen ostrich races. Yeah, hang on. Like it is the funniest, most ridiculous video ever. Okay, here you go. And folks that are just, I'll pop it up on the screen. But this is
zoom, 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 zoom. I'm zooming in my room. My zoom is off forever. My zoom is all together. Zoom, 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 zoom. I'm zooming over there. I'm zooming over here now, and then I'm everywhere. Zoom, 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 zoom.
It's just so.
They shouldn't
funny.
be able to run, right? I mean, it's just
like spinning in circles, falling over, like that nonsense. It's just, I think that would be super funny. But yeah, llamas are one of those things. It's like they have some There's like, you've never heard of a therapy cow, but like therapy llamas are
Huge thing.
things.
Portland Airport, all kinds of
They
different
have
places.
therapy llamas at the
Yes.
Portland Airport.
Yeah, and
oh my God,
parades.
yes.
Yeah, there's
Oh my-
one particular one. What's his name that has a whole following? He has this amazing, super shaggy skin. But also, have you seen the new Minecraft movie?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Of course they have the llama pinata thing.
Yes, but
Right.
like the backdrop of the new Minecraft movie is Idaho. Like it's by the producers that did Napoleon Dynamite. And so there is a rural Idaho dynamic. Yes, you have to go see it. Oh my God. There's like a potato factory. There's llamas. There's like the whole, it's amazing. And so that's the other piece of the place that I think is super interesting is there's this rural to urban dynamic that has also happened. And this is the like homeless with a home place piece of it where I think that this transition from rural
forgot
to urban.
that Napoleon Dynamite had a llama.
Oh my
Tina,
God,
eat the ham. Tina, you fat lard. You know what's interesting? I'm sorry to interrupt. I really appreciated Napoleon Dynamite because like I was trying to explain it to one of my boys recently and he was like, what was the movie about? It's like, okay, what was Napoleon Dynamite about? And I was like, it was about friendship. And you see, if you track through that movie, you see, you know, Napoleon obviously originally like trying to feed Tina the fat lard, you know, this, and it's like, that's a llama. Like everybody gets along with llamas. And here he has this tension between the llama and his obligation to the llama to feed it. And he was really upset about it. Right. And you see Uncle Rico, who's, you know, obviously had this, you know, stymied personal growth because he's still thinking back to 82 when he would have taken state. And, you know, what's his name? The older brother's like, how's Tammy doing? He's like, we broke up. She said, I'm living in the past. And through this entire movie, you see this, you know, Napoleon form a relationship with his buddy, Pedro. And then from that, he like dips into a friendship with Deb. Right. And it becomes this friendship with Deb and his older brother finds, you know, love online. And that's the end of the movie, which is great. And then Uncle Rico, you know, rekindles his love with Tammy, presumably. You never really met her. But it was all about people being out of alignment, right? Out of a relationship, you know, yoke. They weren't properly yoked. And then they find the capacity to have friends. And the whole beginning of the movie is like Napoleon getting tortured by people, like, give me some of your tots, and then like shoving him into a locker and all of these things. It's like, you got to find, you know, your person, or, you know, develop the capacity to be around people and have that proper relationship. I just thought it was such a beautiful movie.
Well, that's a great analysis of it. And part of it is that like I think one of the threads is always that these are the people that seem like misfits, and yet we're all misfits. And it comes around to that, right? So you watch them develop that friendship and support each other, like vote for Pedro, right? And they're unexpected and unpredictable, and yet still representative of everyone, right? And there is that sort of harmony in the ways that I think deeply represents sort of agricultural rural communities, but also this like tension with modernity and change and technology that's part of it. And adolescence, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, obviously you can't. And he's watching the
Navigating
VHS
that.
in his room, like practicing dancing. That's like, that to me really represented the faith, the budding of faith that youth offers, which is like, I can get better at something, even though nobody knows what I'm doing, even though nobody understands. And then you see the debut of that, obviously, at the conclusion of the movie. And again, like I remember going through those things. I told somebody the other day, like, I had this arch nemesis in band for years. I had this arch nemesis. It started in literally 6th grade and went all the way through until this guy, Dave George, moved away. And I had many bouts of like conflict with this guy. It was like, listen to this. I was thinking about it the other day. 6th grade. We were in band together. We didn't go to elementary school. We both play trumpet. 6th grade, you don't have chairs. That's right. So there's no chair tryout, right? 7th grade, he gets into jazz band and I don't. And I was like, oh. And then 8th grade, I do get into jazz band, but he was in jazz band the year before, right? And so then he's playing first trumpet and I don't fight him on it initially. I'm like, no. I believe in myself. And it's like, I forced this chair tryout in 8th grade, and I like demand that Mr. Kaiser was his name, does a chair tryout, and I beat Dave George, right? And then he's like, what? His mom starts getting him trumpet lessons, right? And this was in jazz band where like he was, and then we go into high school, same thing. He goes into marching band over the summer. Everybody knows him. He's getting trumpet lessons. I'm like out of shape. I'm the loser dude who doesn't get trumpet lessons. Same thing. He starts playing first trumpet, and then like a month, and I'm like, no, it's go time, Dave George, and force another chair tryout. Like I kept having these conflicts, but it was that budding of confidence where I think about my 7th grade son now, and I think about him like scheming. He's like, I'm gonna practice for 2 months and then you're mine, son. Like I could not imagine, but like that, and then again, Napoleon dancing in his room and having this faith in this thing. You don't understand what he's doing, and nobody understands what he's doing until he's like, this is what I can do. And you're like, whoa, like that's the whole, I don't know. It's just, that movie to me was like really layered.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And Idaho.
And you should see it. I mean, Minecraft too. Like you can pull those threads and see some really interesting, because there's another video gamer, sort of post-wrestler dynamic.
Post-wrestler? Post-wrestler?
Post-wrestler, was he a wrestler? Yeah.
Was Mickey Rourke in it? Oh my gosh, I love it.
But then like Jack Black and the whole, so it's like.
Is Jack Black still allowed to be around?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Did he get canceled?
Tenacious D? You're not aware of this? I think it was Tenacious D. Yeah, so Jack Black's in a band, or was in a band, right after the attempted assassination of now President Trump. His drummer or something in Australia on stage was like, too bad they missed. And all of a sudden it was like Australia almost deported them immediately, like the band immediately dissolved. It was really, really bad. Now, again, like Jack Black obviously was not the person who said it. It was like, oh my gosh, you can't say that. Like that's a presidential, you can't wish assassination on somebody is like this famous public. Yeah, it was kind of dark. Unfortunate for Jack Black. I've always enjoyed him as an actor.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, back to what were we talking about? I interrupted you for like the Napoleon Dynamite.
Well, no, Minecraft, I mean, popular culture is so far out of my actual wheelhouse, but the Idaho Place part of it.
Idaho.
Yes, exactly.
How do you think people come to find their way feeling at home here? You've done it, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of ways, but I think that the best way is by showing up, right? Like showing up to things. It doesn't matter what thing, but participating in the parts of life we would call civic society, whether that's your PTA or your church or your kids' baseball team or the dance recital or, playing tennis or pickleball. Like interacting with other people is how you build a community. And there are all of these seductions to keep us from doing that, right? Whether that's online or putting our head down. There's always too much work to be done. There's sort of panic to be had. And
panic to be had. That's a great way of putting it.
It's always panic.
Yeah.
And there, we have an abundance of panic in all sorts of things. But we've been trying to be really deliberate at the university about this too, in thinking about the ways that we can kind of rebuild one-on-one opportunities for conversation. So we just launched this mentoring initiative for environmental students and professionals. And it's not like, let's have a big program, because we do that. Like we can get 100 people in the room, talk about something really important. That's great. But what it seems like we're missing is the one-on-one conversation, right? So much of what you do is that, but also this sort of lower stakes invitation to go have coffee with someone and to sit across the table and be like, hey, what's important to you? What are you working on? How's everything going? And I think it's that stage that used to be commonplace. You do it at the grocery store, or you do it, sort of picking and being open to those interactions with strangers, and also being deliberate about interactions with friends or sort of acquaintances and potential friends. And there's a lot that drives us to be lazy about that and instead like stay home and scroll or watch or whatever. But there's so much that is enriched over the longer term by walking your dog and talking to the neighbor on the corner because you're walking your dog, or, riding the ostriches out to the
Right.
fairground or whatever. But those like sort of classic and traditional fabric of a civic society are the ones that I worry about fraying and my kids not being able to encounter. And some of those are school-based and easier, but I think that the ones for busy people are the ones that sort of fray. And people have been saying this for a long time. This isn't like novel to me. It's the whole people don't join bowling leagues anymore, like all of those things. But I think it's simple, but it's hard to see the rewards immediately.
Yeah, and there aren't rules like the Big Lebowski, right? Bowling. They're in this bowling league, and there are these men that come together for this pursuit. I'm actually not really good at making friends for friends' sake. Like, I can't just be friends with somebody because it's fun. It doesn't.
It's hard, yeah.
It's really, really hard. Like, I tried it in college a couple times. Genuinely, like I tried to, there was this guy in my class and we were taking a bunch of classes together. I was like, hey man, you want to like get a burrito? I was like, yeah. And like, he liked chess. I like chess. And we'd like hang out once or twice to play chess. And then it's just like, it didn't work. Right. Yeah. And I don't, I tried it again, kind of when I moved here, and it's like, oh, this doesn't work for me. Like if I don't have an engagement, if I don't have a pursuit and it's not hard, I can't be friends with people. Right. And it has to be like, we're both like army crawling to the finish line. It's like, you going to make it? It's like, I don't know. It's like, come on, we can do it. And it's like, that's how we become, really, really close friends. And so I agree with you. We don't do those things. One criticism I have, or one observation rather, that was related to me about my former state is that that dynamic and that culture bred that style of kind of vacant societal interactions because things were happening really fast, right? Sure. Like a lot of the entertainment costs a lot of money and it's very condensed and fast. You want to go to a movie, it's like $20, but it's like going to be like 90 minutes and you're going to have a good time. Whereas you could go to the library and spend all day long and that's free and you could probably find great stuff, but that takes time and everybody's constrained with time because finance is what you really need to focus on if you're going to continue existing there. And so just having a conversation at the fence line is something that like I'm trying to learn how to do. And it is very tough for me where it's like, okay, I'm so regimented and like, you've been around me enough. It's like, I'm always like, like going and producing. It's like, you got to take a step back, man. Like you got to figure out a way to have wandering conversations with somebody that aren't yielding, that don't factor into like your productivity life, because that's how I've like lived my entire adult life. And I think that's a cultural thing that it seems to me that, people that have been in this state in Idaho for a long time, they've kind of worked out like, it's okay. Like we can just, go to a place that's an hour and a half away and like enjoy it for the day and then like meander back and get a burger on the way. Like that's an okay thing to do. It's free because you don't have to, or maybe it's like $5 for parking and it's going to be awesome. And it's going to be this all day affair. Like it's okay. Like bring a fishing pole too. Maybe we'll find a fish. It's like, wow, man. Like, where are we living? This is so wild.
Yes. Well, and I do think that convenience, that access, and that kind of ritual of like, yeah, let's go exploring. Let's, go for a hike. And I think a lot of people choose to be here in this place because of the accessibility of those things and care very deeply about it, even though what they might be doing might be completely different, right? Like there are folks that would be snowmobiling, folks that would be fishing, folks that would be hiking or bird watching or any number of those things. But all of them would probably agree that they collectively value the opportunity to do that. And to your point, the ease and relative cheapness of doing it and getting home and, not having it be like, we live in Brooklyn and every minute of every day is accounted for and, it has to be reserved 3 weeks ahead of time and planned for. And this sort of serendipity of life in Idaho, I think is one of its many luxuries. Like, you want to go for a run in the foothills? Yeah. Okay, let's go. We can go now.
Did you ever see When Harry Met Sally?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I get worried about that movie with regard to exactly what you're saying, because Meg Ryan, when she breaks up with her guy and she's sitting there explaining to Billy Crystal why, and she was like, I don't want kids. Like, I don't want this relationship. I could go wherever. And she has her whole thing about like the kitchen floor and like all of these different things. And she's like, we never did that. We never just jumped on a flight to Paris. Like we never, none of the things that I so valued having the ability to do did I actually engage in. And I worry about that here because I knew people that moved to, my area, my former area, that said the same things. And it was like, they were grind. They're like, we can go hiking every day. We can do this. It's like, yes, but culturally and financially, you will not do that.
Right.
Because unless you're very wealthy, you do not have the time and the leisure to engage in these things. You're in the hustle with your job and then your side hustle on the weekends. And then you're running around, like you and I both have kids. They're both engaged in sports, but it's not like, oh, they better be on the travel team by 7. And then we're traveling the country and spending ungodly sums of money, which further pressures our, financial state. Yeah. That's a culture that I really worry about coming here, which is everything gets ratcheted up to this RPM and this fever pitch where it's like, so people move it. They're like, it's going to be great. And then they work to death. And that brings up the level of, keeping up with the Joneses. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we have the biggest river system in the country. You ever seen it?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, haven't actually.
Yeah.
Like, that's a concern of mine.
Oh, I think it's a absolutely valid one. And, we should work to make sure that doesn't happen.
We should work to make sure.
Because that seems like a scary and not place I'd want to call home.
Well, I think one thing that you can do is make a compelling case where it's like, it's not going to be just cool if you go explore. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. And it's going to be the reason why you take a step back. Like we have this kind of campaign, like the State Department's took me out to Thousand Springs and they want to do like a lot of different places. Yep. And we were coming up with like, we should do a campaign. And one of the gals that we went, she's like, we should call it the Parked and Wrecked It campaign. Which I thought I was like, we need to get some like RV repair shop to sponsor us. So we have this wrecked old RV or camper that we like go in and we like video the whole thing. And it's just this train wreck, but it's people exploring Idaho. It's like you have the director of the department and then like, the deputy and all, and we're going. And then it was like, there were 4 of us. Right. And I was like, and then we need to bring one person with us every time, but we're the core group. And we just do this campaign to go throughout the state. And we like, it's almost like a reality television, but like, it's like just us. And we're like, I was like, I'll mic all of us up and it'll be hilarious because we have this great time, but we need to showcase that so that people integrate into like, don't just come here and keep working.
Yes.
Come here and find your home here. Come here and find your great summer spot. It's not just McCall. It's not just like 1 or 2 places. It's everywhere. And like, come find it and integrate into this state. Don't just bring the culture of workaholic here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think the other side of that too, I've been thinking a lot about boats and boat ramps and jet skis and, as we move into the summer and stuff. And like, there's a whole lot of wrecking going on that side too. And, like, and even with dogs, like dogs on leash and off leash. And like, so like come here and enjoy it and become part of it and make it your home. And also watch the way that impact cumulatively changes, how it's kind of received. And I think an education campaign like that would not only be hilarious, it would sort of hopefully make people be a little bit more conscientious about, like making sure that when they're out there exploring it and having fun, that they're making sure that the ecological health or the, sort of feasibility of those sites remains.
Dude, how funny would it be if we got like an Airstream or an old teardrop camper or just something and we got it wrapped with like Parked and Wrecked It, and it becomes the campaign to like go across the state and you just showcase. I know people get really upset. People in the small clips I've even put out, they're like, well, thanks for a show. Like now 1,000 people are going to go there. It's like, yeah, but you know what? We have to preserve this. And if people like me that move here do not understand that this stuff is out here, we will not, 1, enjoy it ourselves, and 2, we will not share the tradition with our children, which means in 1 generation, we will have a whole generation of Idahoans, or at least some portion of them, that is not going to defend it. We need the defenders of the landscape to be getting born right now. They need to be loving, Box Canyon. They need to be loving Ritter Island. They need to be loving, of course, redfish and things like that. But if everybody loved it and utilized it in whatever way, there are plenty of spaces for everyone. But like, man, we need to create a culture that defends aggressively the natural resources that Idaho offers.
And if you don't know it, you can't love it, right?
Right.
You got to go see it, and part of that is just making sure you experience those things. Right?
And like, how frequently do people? It's like, oh, I started going there when I was like 35. It's like, no, you go where you grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up going here. I grew up going there. I grew up like Lake Berryessa, or I grew up going here. Well, like, great. You grew up, those were your haunts. And like, then you want to share that tradition with your child. So you take a whole gaggle of people that are in between 30 and 40 and you move them somewhere else. They don't have the, I grew up going here, and they're not going to share that with their children. We need to help them find places to go. So their kids are like, oh yeah, I grew up going to like Box Canyon, and we'd hike down there every time, and we go like swimming in the water, and it was awesome. And like, whatever, like that's the kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this great new book by Christine Rosen, who's not someone I read regularly, but it's called The End of Experience. And it's about this sort of lament of people that are in our generation, as she is as well, that sort of grew up in a world where like you showed up at a restaurant and looked for a table. And if you couldn't find one, then you went somewhere else and something crazy happened to you and it was fine. But that this shift into like the fear of missing out because you've seen a picture instead of actually going and doing something and having that experience is affecting everyone, no matter what their ideological leanings are, but like the end of the power of an experience. And I would add in a particular place, right? Like Box Canyon or Thousand Spring, and the very uniqueness that place has to offer gives you an experience that you want to pay forward, or that you become nostalgic about and you remember and becomes part of you in that piece. But getting people to have those experiences and recognize them as physically embodied experiences that have meaning and that matter beyond the picture or the video or the meme.
Right. Like when you twisted your ankle coming out of Box Canyon and you had to like, had to help you out.
And
It was like, it's almost like those, we need a resurgence of stubbed toes to reintegrate human experience, because it's too much like the picture or the small video. It's like, no. Or remember it was like sweltering hot, or like, remember you had to pee and it was really bad and there was nowhere to go pee. Like whatever,
right,
we've always had those, like we were like growing up going on car trips. We were like, I'm going to pee my pants. And they're like, you're going to have to hold it. And you're like, I can't. I drank a 2-liter bottle of Coke a half an hour ago. I'm going to go. Right. Like,
big gulp.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's hilarious. I have to go to, I don't have to. I'm very fortunate. I'm going to go to INL next week, and they have this 2-day tour set up. And they're like, by the way, you have to bring your passport. So apparently they're showing me some stuff where I have to actually verify that I'm an American citizen.
Oh.
I don't know what it's going to be, but they're like, by the way, it starts at 8 a.m. I'm like, it's 4.5 hours away. Right. They're like, so we'll see you at 8. So I'm literally going to have to get up at 3 and get in the car, and dude, big gulp, like giant. I'm going to have to stop every 10 minutes to go to the bathroom. It's going to be my own awesome, like positive car trip. It'll be great.
Love it.
Dr. Wakild, I've had you here for some time. I have again, 2 for 2, loved this conversation with you. Is there anything you'd like to hit? I know we chatted a lot about, like we went pretty far afoot, but anything you want to hit on in specific before we call it?
No, thanks for doing the work that you're doing. I appreciate it.
I've really, especially the naming, like, again, I think there's a philosophical bent to it, but just understanding, it's like, no, the Owyhees are not like the native tribe. They're a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. Too much Hawaii's got lost.
God, man.
Hawaii.
Yeah. If you are game, like let's, again, as a historian, I'd love it if I'm not the historian. You are always welcome on, first off. And I just love learning more about these things. So like, let's keep picking off these little bits here and there. I had Danielle from the Andrus Center for Public Policy on recently.
Yes. And
she was talking about, we really focused on 3 of the primary things from Cecil Andrus, which were obviously wildlands preservation, women in leadership, and education. And recognizing that individual had such an impact on the state. I love digging in more to those little things and like the history of, for instance, education. I was telling somebody today, the PTA which became, which originally was the Idaho Congress of Mothers, interestingly enough, it used to be a lot of older people.
Yeah.
Right. In 1930, like I saw the former president of the PTA is a friend of mine, and she showed me this picture. She's like, look at this picture. This is from 1930. And she's like, what do you notice? And the first thing I was like, well, everybody's wearing a hat. She's like, women had like bonnets and fancy. Yeah. And then like dudes were wearing like their fancy hats. But she was like, they're all old. These are not working parents. These are like grandparents and community members that valued education in Idaho. And they were doing everything possible to educate their children and their grandchildren and the community. And you juxtapose that to today, where it's like the only members who are on the PTA are like elementary school parents that have the least amount of time and are like trying to do the heaviest lift. You have no older people on the like maybe a couple here or there, but you also have older residents that are arguing against public education. They want to like defund it and things like this. Like the history of education in Idaho, especially public education, is such an interesting one.
So interesting. Yeah. And that intergenerational piece, I think, is a thread that's worth thinking about too.
Yeah.
Cecil Anders got his start in politics on the PTA.
Really?
Yes, he wanted his girls to have kindergarten. He wanted them to have a better elementary. He had 3 girls, and he got involved, and so did his wife Carol, and that's how he sort of became and eventually ran for the legislature and the Senate and the governor. So yeah,
Wow.
the PTA's. I think that's an excellent and important point.
Yeah. Let's do this again.
Yes. Thanks.